Arc 6 Phase 2 begins pretty much immediately where Phase 1 left off, and I'm just gonna front load this information now. Phase 2 is so hilariously clear of Phase 1 that it is not even funny. That isn't even to say that Phase 1 was bad, but Phase 2 is just insanely more interesting with lots of great character work being done here. The phase picks back up with Shala and Subaru, but we also get to see some pretty insane tonal whiplash. We went from Subaru thinking about giving up and grappling with what had happened just a couple of chapters ago, to them all chatting, having fun, and more harem gags. We learn that Shala's name was given to her by her master, and that she has not left the tower in 400 years, so she has no idea about the rumors of her being the sage. Since Shala is named after a real-world star, it's safe to assume that the name was also given to her by somebody isekai'd, much like the witch cult. And it's also safe to say who gave her that name, but I'll wait till the story actually reveals it shortly. Shala recognized Subaru as her master by smell, and Subaru did seem initially shaken by this, probably because he too thought it was related to the envy miasma that clings to his body that has given him trouble in the past. So does it mean that her master also has a tie to Satella like that? Shala also uses English words and speaks in a similar manner to Subaru, and it's safe to assume her master also taught her all these words, who we now find out to be Flugel. Not much of a surprise there, but we have it explicitly stated now. Shala also goes on to state that she is not the sage, just someone trusted to guard the tower by the sage. A tower that originally served the purpose of being a great library, where you can search for anything you'd like. A place for the omniscient sage to store his infinite wealth of knowledge. Sounds particularly greedy. She confirms what was implied in the last phase, that Subaru breaking through the space-time gate of Sandtime is what led Shala to believe that Subaru is Flugel. We also get names for all the floors of the watchtower, which all follow the Pleiades 7 sisters, except that it's missing Merope, so it's only 6. Could this be because the cluster known as Pleiades, which now in Japan is known as Subaru, was actually previously known as Mutsurabashi, or 6 stars in Japan? This would ultimately depend on which period of Japan Flugel is from. The tower itself is actually super cool, full of long-ass spiral staircases and crazy rooms like the Green Room, a room containing walls and floors made out of ivy and a healing spirit. It's just an absurd, magical building that I sort of hoped for when I heard about the Sage's Watchtower. They finally challenged the tower's first trial, a full white room with a stone monolith in the center. Upon touching it, the monolith grew in numbers, some smaller and some bigger, and started glowing with a black radiance. An ominous voice tells them to touch the brightest of the heroes destroyed by Shala. The chapter narration also informs us that some challenges might have a time limit, a limit on attempts, and a max amount of challengers. I assumed each one would be more strict with the rules as time goes, but this was actually not the case. Touching the wrong monolith in the first trial would immediately end the examination and be considered a failure, returning to its natural state. We're also informed that the trials here have the same ominous voice as Echidna's trials. That is to say, it is their own voice. It also only has 3 trials, also like Echidna's. For a guy who existed 400 years ago and someone who chased omniscience, him having a relationship with the Witch of Greed is not that far of a leap. Subaru flies up with Betty using Marok, and my hunch while reading this chapter was correct. The largest monoliths were in the shape of a constellation that formed Orion, who in Greek mythology was killed by the tail of the scorpion, also known as Shala. This essentially confirms that the trial was made to confirm that the person taking it comes from our world. This will definitely be the easiest, and the real trials are to come now that the tower can ensure that Subaru is from Earth. This is further expanding on me loving how the series treats people who were isekai'd. It's like an underground cabal of people who get pulled to ReZero and communicate with each other in their own special way. It's so cool. This might be why Subaru is a sage candidate. It might really just mean people who are isekai'd and could potentially hold the information to allow access to the sage's library. This would mean that Al is theoretically a sage candidate, but he probably doesn't know much about astronomy. He's too busy questing. Subaru then has some interesting in-universe speculation that what if this world were his world, just super far in the future? So far that even stars like Orion are gone. He comes back down from solving the trial and gets a lot of praise and reassuring looks from the party, but this leads to Subaru's imposter syndrome kicking in. He feels that he does not deserve the trusting looks he gets from his friends. It's great to see ReZero not solve mental health issues overnight. Completing the first trial gives them a metric shitload of library shelves with thousands upon thousands of books. This library contains a book on everybody, past to present, that has died. My current theory is that somewhere in this library there are about 30 Natsuki Subaru books just sitting waiting to be spotted by somebody. The library itself is a super unique narrative tool to give out backstories to long-gone characters. I actually really thought this was an awesome addition to the series. Subaru reads a book about Typhon, the Witch of Pride, and her history of questioning sins and how we dole out punishment for said sins. This could be a stretch, but the Typhon design in the book and the one that we're familiar with is a bit different. Is this similar to the different faces of Echidna that we saw in the Dreamscape and in the Tomb? Reading these books for everyone else is just like reading any ordinary book, but Subaru and Julius have strong reactions to reading some of them, as if they are experiencing their lives, their memories. We later learn that this is due to the requirement of you needing to know the person written about, when Julius reads the book of a man he killed, Balaroy Temglyph, a general of the Empire of Wallachia. I still don't know how to say that. Phase 2 does this thing where it starts opening up with backstories of all the witches, and it's super neat. There are a couple of standout ones, like Minerva's backstory. She grieved her powerlessness her powerlessness to put an end to strife, violence, and war. She gathered that strength and declared a war on sadness. The Witch of Sloth, ostracized by her people, forced to live as a beast in the mountains, she gained power, was taken in by some men, later killed those men, and went and killed her entire family and race, and then lived a life of rest. Echidna's small backstory was really good, marching forward as long as she feels she isn't alone to continue marching on to wipe every tear away. We also learn that Shala was given 5 orders, or rules for the Watchtower's trials. Number 1 is that she cannot let the challengers of the library leave. Number 2 is that she cannot let someone violate the rules. Number 3 is that she cannot let someone disrespect the library. Number 4, she cannot let someone destroy the tower. And number 5, there is no 5th, which is highly doubtful and will probably play a crucial role later. This raises the threat that Shala poses quite a bit more, despite her airheadedness. She is loyal to Subaru, but we now know that there are conditions in which she will turn on them. Emilia points out that it's cruel to have to play a game in which they don't know the full rule set, and if you violate those rules, you're dead. They enter the room of the second trial after this, in which a sword lies in the center of the ground. They are told, gain his forgiveness by the hand of the fool who has reached the heavenly sword. When Subaru takes the sword out of the ground, a man appears and repeats that very phrase until he gets tired of it and starts talking mad shit. He called himself the Stick Swinger, but I'm pretty sure this was Reed Estrella by his description. Julius runs in to try and deal with him only for Reed to stop his sword with a pair of chopsticks. This, on top of many dialogue exchanges between the two, completely destroys Julius's pride as a swordsman. The sword is really all he has left at this point, and then said sword is broken with the prior mentioned chopsticks. Anastasia tries to back up Julius, but they both end up passed out. Emilia then engages Reed and requests a victory on the condition of making him move 1 step, which he accepts. Emilia goes absolutely crazy, hammering him left, right, and center with ice magic, and she does the sacrifice play to give him an upward slash so that she can slam his head with ice gauntlets. The illustrator made this fight look lame as fuck, but it sounded pretty cool. Emilia passes the trial, but the others do not. Reed will only let her pass. Rather than continue to face the brute known as Reed, they flee downstairs to think of a better plan. I enjoy that Ram did not remain a stranger to the sleeping Rem, and has developed a genuine care for her supposed sister, especially evidenced by her miasma-laden but still true words back in Phase 1. We learn that Reinhard is of course the strongest of Lagunica, but Cecilius Segment is the strongest of the Valachian Empire, the Crazed Prince is the strongest of Gesteco, and Halabel is the strongest of Kararagi. Nothing super relevant to what's going on, but interesting lore nonetheless. Julius wakes up and, without consulting anyone, immediately goes back to challenge Reed once more. Despite him getting bodied again, he gets back up and keeps pushing forward. This is the indifferent cruelty of the universe versus the indomitable human spirit. Julius' strength as a swordsman was the only thing he has left. His name has been lost, his house has been lost, his family gone. The spirits he held near and dear to him no longer recognize him. He is shapeless, and to be defeated is to be denied the last thing he has. He is desperate to stand shoulder to shoulder with the people he respects, to be seen in the same bright light as them. Reed finally recognizes Julius as a true adversary after Julius comes to accept that in this hopeless situation, there are no allies that can support him. No family, no bonds, only his strength can carry him forward. In a further parallel to Subaru of Arc 3, Julius ends up in the same position as him, making a reckless decision to pick a fight with someone he has no business picking a fight with due to his hubris and inferiority complex blowing up in his face. Subaru figures he knows Julius, so he knows exactly where he went, and he goes to retrieve his now unconscious body from Reed's room. He walks with him down the stairs until he comes to, and Julius refuses to rely on Subaru to carry him down the steps, now that he feels that he should only rely on his own strength. Subaru denies this development entirely. You don't need to stand on your own, and not everything people do for you has to come with a debt. It's okay to be supported by others, a lesson that Subaru himself had to learn. Julius demands that Subaru goes down the stairs without him and tells Emilia and co that he's okay, but Subaru refuses. How could he live with himself if he left Julius on that staircase? Somebody who, just like him, had his heart lit ablaze, who had suffered an embarrassing defeat but kept standing up, and felt like he was alone in this world. How could he do that to him? They reunite with the group and get to talking with Shala more about the second trial. Besides further extrapolation on her hating Reed, Subaru comes to realize that Shala is yet another obstacle that they have to worry about clearing in this tower. She wants them to fail so that they can stay with her, and it's something to be worried about what lengths she might go to make sure of that. Currently, she is docile. We will also learn of the next threat, that the group has only around a month of food stocked up in their carriages. Also, Shala offhandedly calls Emilia a half-devil and pretty much nobody reacts to it. It doesn't even seem to faze Emilia. Subaru goes to the green room to be with Rem and by extension Anastasia, until he falls asleep in a chair. He wakes up to Anastasia missing, and his fear of Echidna being loose causes him to search for her. He has trouble finding her initially until a bird leads him through a secret passage in the wall heading to a balcony of this very tall tower, where Anastasia, or Aridna, sits. They get to talking and showing initial distrust of each other, and Aridna pushes Subaru on his origins and reveals that the Anastasia camp has done a background check on Subaru and found nothing. I'm kind of sad that this conversation slipped so easily because holy shit, this was a super interesting line of questioning. Echidna shows what I believe is a genuine fear of Subaru due to the absolute insane timing he has, the fact that Shala considers him the sage, and his lack of background. Suddenly, Julius bursts in and finds out about everything relating to Aridna. He seems initially extremely frustrated, then mellows down to just being depressed. This is yet another thing he has to grapple with on his plate. Arc 6 is Julius' suffering time. He lost his brother, his name, he got humbled by Reed, lost his sword, and now he finds out about Aridna. Julius is already calling into question his own validity as a knight, his own strength, and the truth being hidden from him only sends him deeper into this questioning. They go their separate ways, and Subaru suddenly thinks of a plan to handle Reed. He 180s and starts heading down the watchtower, and then he wakes up in the green room with no memories, as if he got isekai'd again. This was the biggest mindfuck of all time. I have 3 theories, one is way more likely than the others. 1, this is something relating to being isekai'd perhaps, like Al's episodic memory as mentioned in the novels previously. 2, he went to the library, found his own books, read them, and got so sucked into them it reset his brain. And 3, the more likely one is that he went to go read Estrella's book, and as mentioned in the previous one, got too sucked into it. Every time he got sucked into a book, there was someone to kind of snap him out of that trance. But this time, he was on his own. This makes me hope even more that there were a bunch of Natsuki Subaru books in the library. It would be so fucking good. Subaru has the chance to become a very interesting case of character regression, a character founded on taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. When Subaru usually regresses, it's more of a relapse, a very emotionally raw experience that is relatable to a lot of people, but now we're taking hundreds of steps backwards. Amnesia is an extremely finicky plot device. They usually come with a huge risk, as characters you understand, build a deep connection with and love, regress back to their starting points or to an almost unrecognizable point. I'm not sold on this plot point yet, but I will let Taipei cook. Phase 2 kind of reveals Arc 6's true antagonist in a way. It's not the Sage, and it's not even the Tower. It's our own memories. Memories which are things that define who we are. What are you without them? An arc with the foundation of finding a way to solve gluttony with Rem and Julius. Aridna having no memories of her creator. Books of the dead recounting the memories of lost lives. A walking corpse known as Reed Estrella, and now our very own protagonist, Subaru Natsuki. For the Phase 2 review, I do have a couple of negative points, but they are so heavily outweighed by the positives, it's not even funny. Number 1, the amount of intrigue added to the story in one phase alone is insane. Phase 2 has cracked open Arc 6 for me. Number 2, the further use of the concept of being isekai'd is awesome. I've always loved this. Number 3, the library is a really interesting narrative tool to give backstories to long-gone characters. Number 4, Julius is a great character, and his dynamic with Subaru is just as interesting to read, and I'm really glad that he's getting a lot of focus right now. Number 5, I love looking through other characters' eyes at Subaru and seeing just how much of an anomaly he is. That scene with Anastasia on the balcony was so interesting. And number 6, this phase was actually paced really well compared to the previous ones that I've been reading, so this was actually surprising. For the negatives, number 1, the tonal whiplash that I mentioned near the beginning was still heavy on my mind at the start of phase 2. Second, ReZero is quickly recycling the same harem gags over and over, and I'm starting to roll my eyes when it happens. That and the Lollymancer gag. It's just so old. If there are any light novel changes for phase 2, I was not at all told about them, and I'm not in the market to go looking through them and getting spoiled, so we'll just assume that there were none for phase 2, and if there were some, I'll go back in the phase 3 video and talk about them, and let's just get straight into my expectations. Number 1, Subaru will fall pretty far mentally. I don't even know how to mark this one after how this phase ended. Number 2, Garfield's mother's memories are still on the back burner. Number 3, still nothing about a traitor, gonna take this one down a notch. Number 4, still haven't seen Al, so we're gonna ignore that one. Number 5, Subaru being isekai to assemble the witch factors has still had no development, but I will note that Subaru's name can translate to unite, or to gather together. Number 6, Sirius will escape. Obviously nothing yet, maybe Arc 7. Number 7, Betelgeuse's spirit is not causing problems yet, but it'd be funny if it started now that Subaru doesn't even remember him. Number 8, Fox Echidna will lead to multiple problems. I'm starting to become convinced that she is actually a good person, especially with how many red herrings we've gotten of her being up to no good. Number 9, more info about people beyond the Great Waterfall. Nothing yet, but the waterfall was mentioned, so who knows. Number 10, Dragon's Blood resolution. Nope, and Atsuka has completely forgotten about it, so I don't even know if this is still a thing. Number 11, Shadow Garden stuff is still nothing, of course. And finally, number 12, Roswell's motivation has still not been revealed. I could try and predict phase 3, but truth be told, I have no fucking idea what's coming after how phase 2 ended. The most I will say is number 13, Shala will become their enemy in at least one loop. It's been spoken about too much to not happen, and it'll probably be disastrous. That's about it for the phase 2 video though, and I will see you all in ReZero Arc 6 phase 3. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for the funny YouTube algorithm. You can check the description down below, and you can follow me on Twitter, where I'm objectively correct at all times. You can also join my Discord, where I live blog my reading of ReZero, so if you want what I think about the phase before I post a video, you can go down there and join the channel. And that's about it. Thank you for watching. See ya.